Good morning followers, today's video is going to be all about solving small scale farm problems. So there's a lot of issues with trying to start a farm, particularly if you're trying to run a business from a small scale farm, and this is the kind of video that I wish I'd seen before I'd started, so I hope you enjoy it. Firstly, I wanted to have a little chat about money. It's obviously a bit of an awkward conversation and it depends on your situation personally. I'm not going to talk about BPS, cap payments, anything like that, because if you're a small scale farmer, it's highly unlikely that you are going to get those payments. And also with all the upcoming changes with Brexit, it's not something you can rely on. So I'm going to ignore those completely. A recommendation that I'm going to make from the start is do not get yourself into debt to start your farm. You do not want to have a monthly outgoing payment trying to pay off your loan or your credit card or whatever it may be to get your farm started. It's going to put huge pressure on you and it could really turn your farm business into a negative exercise. The brilliant Joe Salatin actually said to build a 1-year nest egg. So get a job or continue with the job that you're in currently, build up what you need to live off of for 1 year and then start your farm business. You can then dedicate your time to developing the business. The worst case scenario, in a year's time you have to go back to work. So it's really not as bad as getting yourself into debt, spending years paying it off or having this pressure on yourself. That's really good advice. Saying that, that's not what I did at all. I simply built up a nest egg that meant I could work part-time and worked part-time. So I cut down my hours at work and then built my farm business up in my spare time. With both of these suggestions, you're not going to be living the life of Riley. You're going to need to make some compromises, and I think if you truly want to start your own farm, you're going to be prepared to do that anyway. So try and live frugally. Obviously, if you're producing your own meat and eggs, that can be a huge saving, but obviously starting a farm as well, you're going to have a huge amount of outlay in developing your infrastructure, buying houses for your animals, buying trailers, things that are one-off payments at the start, but are necessary. The really important consideration is your cash flow. So if you were to start farming turkeys, for example, all of your income is likely going to be in December or perhaps some in November, but it's going to be all at the same time and you're going to have a huge outlay to begin with. So if your budget doesn't support that, perhaps think about how you can have income throughout the year. So perhaps you could keep turkeys from July to December and you could keep pigs from January to June. And then you've got two income streams. Another way is to pick a product that sells all year. So if you started off with free range eggs, for example, within a couple of weeks you would have your product ready. It's something that people want throughout the year, but you are going to have a decrease in production throughout the winter. So how are you going to cope with that? These are all things that you need to consider and will probably come up in your business plan. So make sure you have that comprehensive business plan in place and how your cash flow is going to be sustained throughout the year. Obviously, if you are farming turkeys, you usually have quite a big period of space where you're doing nothing. January to May, it might just be marketing. You probably won't have any animals on your site. So perhaps you could get a seasonal job or perhaps you could find a position that can work around your business. These are other considerations to make and depend on the individual business, but they need to be considered before you just hand your notice in and start up a farm. Generally, all livestock farming and arable farming is seasonal income, so it's not likely that you're going to find an income stream that provides you with income every single day, 365 days of a year. So you just need to be prepared for the peaks and falls. In your business plan, this is where you're going to realise when those are going to be and make sure you've got enough money to see you through the year. Most small-scale farmers are new to the job, and that means that one downside of this is going to be your lack of knowledge. And you could have spent 3 years at agricultural college, you could have read every single book under farming on Amazon, which is exactly what I did. You could have even gone on every single farming course that you found, but nothing beats actual farming. So I suggest building up your knowledge beforehand as much as possible. But really, it's going to come down to keeping your own animals to start learning on the job. And when I say that, I don't mean going out and buying a flock of 100 Shetland cattle or 50 sheep. I would just start small, have a prototype, test things out, see if they work, see if you enjoy it, see if you can sell your produce, see if it's worth it financially. There's lots of things to take into consideration, and if you do it small scale to start with, you're not losing out on too much if you don't enjoy it or if it doesn't go to plan. And one huge thing that I wish I'd heard before I started farming was do not be scared to fail. Farming is going to seriously test you, and there's going to be failures. Everyone, even the most successful farmers, have failures. Do not be put off by it. It's just part of the journey, and just learn from it. Another way to hugely increase your knowledge of farming is to surround yourself by more knowledgeable farmers. And by that I mean attending NFU meetings, or perhaps there's a local smallholders group, go to livestock markets, and a really brilliant method is social media. So sign up to Twitter, that's where a lot of farmers are. Also they're on Instagram and Facebook. Follow accounts that have got similar farms to you, but also follow accounts that haven't, because they can inspire you and help you on your journey just as much as those that do an exact same thing. It's a really helpful tool, it's free. These accounts can help you with local knowledge, they can help you find stock, source local suppliers, and just really benefit you in supporting you on your journey as well. I get great relief when I see other farmers making mistakes, because when I first started farming I followed all the wrong accounts really, those that had perfect world of farming and nothing ever went wrong, and it made me feel as soon as I made a mistake that I was a failure. And that's not the case at all. There's plenty of people out there that have been farming for years and years, have really successful businesses, and their pigs get out, or their goats get sick, or something happens that's happened to you. You've got the huge, daunting task of choosing what to farm. Now, you can read tons of books, as you can see, I've already done that, and it really comes down to choosing what you enjoy to farm. So spend some time around different livestock, perhaps go to a local petting farm or farmers that you know, see what animals you enjoy being around. You're going to spend a lot of time with these animals. You're also going to want to farm something that you enjoy eating. So if you're farming pigs but you hate pork, you're going to get sick of pork really quickly. Whatever you farm, you're going to have leftovers, or you're going to have stock that's hard to sell, or you're going to have certain cuts that just aren't very popular. At the moment I work at a beef cattle farm, and I know that if I cut a bit slightly wonky sirloin steak, it's going to end up on my plate. So it needs to be something you enjoy eating. Also think about what animals suit your personality. If you're not a morning person, don't go into dairy. Also think about what tasks are involved in caring for an animal. So if you don't like cleaning out hutches, don't go into rabbits. If you are the kind of person that likes spending a lot of time indoors, probably not going to go into sheep farming. So have a think about you as a person. When choosing what animals to farm, also think about the commitment levels that you have at the moment. A lot of people start off their first farm and they've got a career on the side. It might be a different type of farming, or it might be a completely different career entirely. So what you need to do is just think about what level of commitment you have, how much time you're able to dedicate to an animal. So remember, baby animals, they're always going to require more commitment. If you're lambing, for example, you're going to need to be there pretty much 24 hours a day. Maybe think about just getting in lambs that are freshly weaned and fattening up for the freezer. That's what I'm going to do this year. Or perhaps buying in weaners and then fattening them up for pork or bacon. That's another great way to get into farming without having to deal with overwintering your stock, and also having the commitment of being there at farrowing and looking after baby animals. It's a big time commitment. Now I'm going to go into much more detail later on in this video, but if you've got small acreage, you're not going to want to go into cows. They require a lot of ground. Perhaps turkeys will be better for you. They're obviously a much smaller animal, they take up a lot less space, and you only really have them on the farm for 5 months of the year. So really think about what acreage you've got, what type of land you've got, what infrastructure you've got before making a decision about the animals. My last point is about working with small acreage. It's a fact that most first-time farmers are only going to have a small amount of acreage. I've only got 4 acres here, but as I discussed earlier, you're just going to have to pick animals that suit the amount of land that you've got. So like these girls down here, my pygmy goats take up no room at all. A herd of cows obviously is not going to work on 4 acres. A couple of cows might, but then that probably limits me to what I'm going to farm otherwise. So I'm definitely not going to keep cows on here. Pygmy goats are fine, probably a couple of sheep and a couple of pigs, and some poultry, and then that will be my max. What you don't want to do is pack out your land, overstock it, then you've got worm problems, you've got stress in the animals, you need to feed them extra supplement feed because you've not got enough grazing for them. It just opens you up to a whole heap of different troubles, so it's not worth overstocking. So sit down, think about the land that you've got. A good way to see stocking rates is to go onto companies like Pasture for Life, have a look at what they recommend. What's commonly found from overstocking is poaching, and that's where livestock their hooves and things will break down the ground that they're standing on, and it will ruin your grazing. So that's something you really don't want to do. What I'm planning on doing here is keeping my animals' numbers to a minimum during winter time. So I'm just going to have my laying hens and my pygmy goats. Then throughout the spring and the summer and part of the autumn, I'll bring in pigs, sheep and goats, other goats. But obviously during winter just have hardly anything at all, and that will really help with my ground and my grazing. Really bear in mind the fact that you're going to need to rest your ground. The best ground is rested. If you're thinking about farming for a business purpose, so you're going to sell your produce direct to consumers or perhaps to restaurants or commercial clients, what you're going to need to do is forget about competing with industrial farmers. If you're on a small holding, you're not going to have a herd of 250 cattle, you're not going to have a flock of 1,000 sheep, so just forget that straight away. Do not try and compete with big boys of farming with quantity. What you want to do is really promote quality. So in that regards, I tend to focus on my story and what I'm passionate about, what my values are. So my story, obviously I'm a first generation farmer, I'm a young farmer just, and also I have the real desire to have all animals free range, to have all animals living as natural life as possible. So I'm antibiotic free, and my animals that are able to be are grass fed. Think about your brand. Consumers love to buy into a brand, and when you're not selling huge quantities of meat or eggs, you're going to need to think of another way of making money, which is really selling your story and producing really high quality products. The other thing about producing quality is that you'll find that you have a loyal customer base who will come to you because they know they can get products that are of a high standard, and that's what you want from your business as well. The other thing about producing high quality is you can charge a lot more. So if you're selling grass fed, for instance, that attracts a premium, or free range. You can also belong to different associations, like there's the Golden Turkey Association, there's Pasture for Life, there's obviously organic. All these different tags and different values that you add to your farm can all add at a price, so you can charge more, which means you don't have to be having huge quantities of stock leaving your farm, which is perfect when you've only got 4 acres like me. Your profit margins also heavily rely on your marketing skills, so you're going to need to be really good at marketing your product, selling direct to customers, so be a real people person, especially if you're working at farmers markets. People want to talk to the farmer that's behind the produce, but obviously you've got to be warm, welcoming, friendly, and want to sell your story, and obviously be really passionate about what you do. And use the fact that you've got a small flock or a small herd as a selling point. People love to hear about the dream farm where, you know, there's 3 pigs running around an acre of pasture, and there's 6 chickens just running around the field. That's what they imagine when they're buying from a small business. So use your small flock or small herd or whatever you've got going on as a selling point. Don't think of it as a negative. And lastly on this point, when you've got small numbers of stock going out and coming in, you're going to have to try and make as much money as you can from every individual cut of meat. So the best way to do this is to make your product into a meal. So what I find really easy to sell are items like burgers, eggs, sausages, bacon, items that can immediately be associated with a meal, or can immediately be turned into a meal very easily. It is a lot harder to sell, say, a leg of lamb or a pork loin, just simply because I think people are becoming more detached with cooking, and they're used to just buying, going into Sainsbury's and buying a chicken Kiev. They want a meal at the end of the day. So if you can turn a whole chicken into chicken Kievs or chicken burgers or whatever you want to do, that will make you a lot more money because you can sell it for a higher premium because of convenience. Just think about what you can do to make a profit. Although obviously you need to take into account your time, quite often people will pay a lot more for that product. So have a look. Like I say, pork, selling half a pig is quite difficult, but there's hardly any work in it. You get it back from the abattoir and you ship it off. But if you can spend some time making bacon, making sausages, making burgers and selling little products like that, you can make a lot more money from it. So please don't think about having small acreage as a downside. You're just going to have to work with what you've got. I'm really happy with the 4 acres I've got here. I started in 2016 with 1 acre. I did end up with 25 acres, and then I've come all the way back down again. But actually I've got a better idea in my head now of what I'm going to use each acre for, and I'm going to make use of every single space on my farm. I'm also going to be really careful about not overstocking, what animals I bring in, and being really clever about the produce I sell. So this can really help overcome problems associated with having a small farm. But please don't be negative about it. You're a small farmer, be proud of it, shout about it, and just don't try and compete with the big boys because you're completely different.